Welcome back to Movie Rewind. Today we'll be looking at the movie Nobody. There will be spoilers ahead, so take care. The story revolves around a man named Hutch Mansell. He seems like an ordinary guy living an ordinary life with his wife Becca and 2 children. He works at a small metal fabrication company owned by his father-in-law Eddie. It is a tedious job he doesn't seem to enjoy. One night, his family's home is invaded by 2 thieves. Hutch catches them and notices that it is a man and a woman, but for some weird reason, he lets them get away with the cash there. Just then, his son Blake steps in and tries to stop one of the thieves. Surprisingly, Hutch tells his son to release the man and the thieves are able to escape. Before leaving, one of the thieves punches Blake in the face. Hutch is shocked but does not do anything. Becca and Blake are disappointed and consider Hutch too weak to protect their threatened family. Even worse, his inability to deal with the burglary incident spread quickly in the neighborhood, and everyone was disappointed at Hutch and called him a failure. Charlie, his brother-in-law, was also very disappointed in Hutch and even gave him a gun so he could use it to protect his family. Later, Hutch meets Eddie, his father-in-law, and informs him that he wants to buy his company. They fail to agree on a price as Eddie insists that Hutch needs to make a much more reasonable offer. Later, Hutch calls his adopted brother Harry through a hidden radio in his office. Hutch narrated the events of the night before and explained how he had deliberately not wanted to attack the thieves because they were desperate people who were most likely stealing out of necessity. He had come to this conclusion because they only took a small amount of change and had made use of unloaded guns. He felt sorry, and this is why he did not want to fight back. After work, Hutch visited his father, David, who lived in a nursing home. When he returned home, he could tell that his wife and son were still annoyed at his cowardice. They ignored him as he walked in, but his daughter Sammy came to him and asked that he help her find her missing kitty cat bracelet. He realizes that the thieves might have taken it last night, so without saying a word, he leaves the house. He sees his father at the nursing home where he takes an old gun. He then plans to track down the thieves. He recalls the tattoo on the wrist of one of the thieves. He draws it out and takes it to several tattoo parlors. Hutch was looked down on in one of the places, but when a certain man walked up to him and thanked him, the others began to respect and respond to him. He manages to get the address of where the thieves live. He goes there and threatens them to hand over his daughter's bracelet. Eventually, he becomes guilty when he hears the sound of a baby crying and decides to leave them alone. Hutch boards a bus to get home. Some drunken thugs also board the bus. Hutch watches them annoy some of the passengers. At some point, he decides that he has had enough and is prepared to take out his frustration on them. Surprisingly, he is able to single-handedly take on all of the thugs. Becca is shocked to see Hutch come home in such a battered state. She treats his bruises with care and stays with him until he sleeps. Later, Hutch tries to reconnect with his family and they finally seem happy again. Next, we see a man named Yulian Kuznetsov enjoying a party at a nightclub. He is a Russian crime lord who runs a money laundering business. At some point, Yulian resorts to slashing the throat of a random customer at the club just so he can prove how dangerous he is to his Mafia colleagues underestimating him. After that, Yulian receives a call informing him that his younger brother Teddy was lying in a coma at the hospital. He does not take this news well and vows to go after whoever beat up his brother. It turns out that it is Hutch. Teddy had apparently been one of the thugs who was on Hutch's bus the previous night. When Yulian goes to the hospital, he finds out that one of the thugs had managed to steal Hutch's business card that night. The next morning, Hutch is enjoying breakfast with his family when he receives a call from Harry. He warns Hutch that a criminal kingpin is after him for beating up his brother. Harry advises him to meet up with someone called the Barber, who is helpful in providing the much-needed information about Yulian. In spite of the scary stories, Hutch does not appear fazed or scared, let alone regret his actions. He decides to face the consequences of that night head-on. Meanwhile, Yulian gives the business card to a woman and tells her to find out everything about Hutch. This is when we learn of Hutch's action-packed past. He is surprisingly brutal on a mission and never fails to eliminate his targets. Considering the information, the woman advises Yulian to not get involved with Hutch, but Yulian is unhinged. That night, Yulian sent a crew led by his right-hand man named Pavel. The crew made their way to Hutch's home. Hutch quickly sensed the incoming attack and hid his family in the basement. By the time Julian's henchmen stormed the house, Hutch was ready to brutally slaughter all of them except Pavel, who came up from behind and electrocuted him. Later, Hutch regained his senses and managed to free his hands from the handcuffs. He finds a fire extinguisher in the trunk of his locked car and uses it to blind the driver. The car crashes and Pavel is killed in the process. Hutch returns to the house. His family comes out of the basement and sees the dead bodies all over the house. Hutch takes his family to a different location where he believes they would be safe. He assures Becca that he will deal with the threat as quickly as possible and come back to them. Hutch went on to secure all of his possessions, including a pile of gold bullion that he was paid after a dangerous job he completed in the past. Once he was done, he set fire to his house to erase all evidence. In the meantime, Julian's henchmen have gone to the nursing home to kill David. Surprisingly, the old David killed them in an instant. Hutch then goes to Eddie and buys his company with the gold bullion. At this point, Julian is furious that Hutch keeps eluding him and sends out another batch of henchmen. Hutch anticipates this move and is preparing himself for it. He goes to where Julian stores all the cash for his business. He kills the guards on site and burns all of the money and his art collection. From there, he goes to Julian's nightclub to confront him. After being threatened by a claymore mine, Julian orders everyone to leave, so he sits down alone to face Hutch. With a calm demeanor, Hutch tells Julian that he will let him live if he doesn't bother his family again. Hutch also informs him that all of the money's gone, so he will have to start a new life. After saying that, he leaves Julian and goes into his car. As expected, Julian was not about to let it go, so he ordered all his men to chase Hutch. They follow Hutch to the factory he bought from Eddie. Unexpectedly, David and Harry are there to help Hutch kill the gangsters. They use various weapons and deadly traps that Hutch has prepared in advance. Turns out that David is a retired FBI agent, while Harry is a highly trained ex-soldier. The three manage to overthrow all of Julian's men. After an action-packed battle, Hutch kills Julian with a claymore mine. David and Harry leave the scene, leaving behind only Hutch, who turns himself in when the police arrive at the scene to arrest him. Hutch is interrogated by a man and a woman who do not believe he killed all those people without help. Eventually, Hutch is released without any charges filed against him. Before leaving, the investigators asked Hutch, "Who are you?" To which Hutch simply replied, "I'm nobody." It turns out that Hutch Mansell is a former hitman who is employed by the intelligence services. 3 months later, Hutch and Becca are buying a new house when they receive a mysterious call saying their services are needed. The movie ends with a mid-credit scene where Harry and David drive to an undisclosed RV loaded with guns. That was the recap. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, comment on what your favorite part was, and make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to leave the post notification bell on so that you will get future video updates. Until next time, take care and goodbye.